This is Questions of Courage, a podcast from the youth section at the Goetheanum, hosted by Nathaniel Williams.
Welcome to Questions of Courage. Today I'd like to talk about the idea of liberating gift money. And I have to give you a little background for today's episode if you haven't listened to the last two episodes. In the last episode, I was speaking about a working group that was exploring the ideas of decommodifying land and how it's connected to inequality and suffering. And in the episode before that, I was introducing a gathering, which is going to take place in September of this year, called Working for Freedom and the Common Good. And it is an event that is being hosted by the youth section in collaboration with the World Goetheanum Association. And consciously held 100 years after Daniel Dunlop's inauguration of the World Power Conference, which today is known as the World Energy Council. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about that because you can go back and listen to the past episodes, but I will return to it by the end of this episode. Now, one of the goals that we have as we look towards gathering together in September was to pick up particular questions and themes that are core ideas of associative economics and to find experts and people who are working with those ideas in practice to try to understand them clearly, to understand them better, and then to ask ourselves the audacious question, if there was a World Economic Conference that was dedicated to a spirit of cooperation beyond national identity, ethnicity, or religious belief or class, if there was a World Economic Conference in this spirit, what would our current understanding and practices of, let's say, gift money look like on that scale? And lastly, what do we need to do to work in that direction of a bigger collaboration with these ideas? So the working group invited Kelley Buhles, and I first met her actually relatively recently through John Bloom. They were colleagues at Rudolf Steiner Social Finance in California for many years, where Kelley also worked in philanthropy and advising donors and something that's called shared gifting. Now, if you'd like to learn more about her, I invite you to look at the show notes where I've shared a link that will take you to her website, where there are also articles about her work. And for this session, I'd like to just focus on the idea of gift money as Kelley shared it with us, but also on the background of some lectures she suggested we read, and then to try to get into what is the significance of gift money in the economy. Now, one of the things that Kelley shared with us, it was really a thought that stayed with me and I'm sure stayed with other people, is how philanthropy is organized today is in some ways really out of tune with the quality and the attitude of the experience of giving something, of making a gift. One of the examples that she pointed to, or facts that she pointed to, is that when you look at the amount of money that people consider to be philanthropic money, so all the money that's somehow part of the big philanthropic infrastructure of our current economy and society, that 95% of it is never given away. That 95% of it is given out in loans, and that only the interest or the return on those loans is given away as grants, scholarships, and in other forms. And she points out that when we take that into consideration and we look at the total amount of money that is considered to be in the philanthropic sector, and we take away 95% of that, she characterized for us a situation where our economy is starved of gift money. Well, in order to be able to understand that, it would be best to try to first understand, why is gift money important? Well, one of the places that we're all familiar with gift money is in family. And for those of us who have children or are living in a family situation right now, we can easily think about how we are constantly giving to children totally outside of a market structure, just giving to them, and we're not calculating when they're going to give back, if they're going to give back, or how they're going to give back. And I'm sure that some people who are listening to this might think, well, this is not a good metaphor to look at economic reform with. But rest assured, Kelley nor I wanted to suggest that everything would turn into gift money, but only to look at the experience of giving in the family, but also receiving in the family as one form that is totally widespread and common of giving in society that persists to this day. And when we ask ourselves, what is the significance of giving for the economy? What is the significance of us supporting children and supporting them to get education and not making them work, depending on where we are in the world and what country or society we're living in? Sometimes for into their 20s, young people can be supported through this. What is the economic significance of this? Well, one of the things that you can find in one of the lectures Kelley suggested we read from Rudolf Steiner's course, Rethinking Economics, is that you can look at 3 different types of money: purchase money, loan money, and gift money. Purchase money is the kind of money that we are using most, and it has to do with our daily exchanges at shops, parking meters, anywhere where we're just buying and exchanging goods, usually in relatively small amounts throughout our daily lives. And when you look at loan money, it's quite different. Loan money is, as we all know, is something that now and then we will receive, let's say in a significant amount, even though some people living with credit cards, many of us living with credit cards in a way are working with loan money more often. But generally speaking, when you get a loan, it's quite a different character. You're given money and you pay back in interest, and this money can be used in all manner of ways. But often loans are given in order to start initiatives, to start new businesses, to improve or make renovations on something that exists, to add value somewhere. And the money is paid back as well as some kind of interest on the loan. And then the third type of money that Rudolf Steiner characterizes is gift money. And he suggests this is when money is given and it is explicitly no strings attached in order to fulfill the needs of the person that it's given to. It does not go to meet our own needs. So when we deal with purchase money, we give for something in return. When we deal with loan money, we give and we return interest as well as what we gave. And when we give gift money, we just give. And there is a process of the other person using the money, and that's it. So those are some characterizations from the reading Kelley suggested we look at. She suggested some other things as well, but for today I can only focus on so much, and this is going to be one of the focal points. He suggests that gift money, of the three types of money, economically speaking, is the most powerful. How are we to understand that? Well, let's think about, for instance, the example we started with of the fact that we all receive, or those of us who are fortunate enough, as many of us, receive gifts in our families, sustenance, shelter, and also an education for years before we have to worry about paying our own way, so to say. And what is the result of that gift, economically speaking? The impact of all of that gift money is inarguably connected with our ability to contribute to the economy for the rest of our lives. And this is just one example of how gift money can be seen from an economic perspective, but you have to look over decades. Now, one of the reasons that economists and many people have a difficult time thinking about gift money is exactly this. It takes so long in some cases to see the gift turn into economic productivity, and in all the various ways that it does that. In fact, basically, it's not possible and maybe not even that desirable. But when we want to look at balance sheets, when we want to look at the so-called sustainability of what we're giving out, often we want to see, or we want to be able to justify using resources in the relatively short term. And this kind of thinking, which is drawn more from market thinking, where we have transactions and balance sheets of profit and loss that might, record what I've done economically over 6 months and tell me how the business is doing, or even over 2 years. This way of thinking, Kelley suggests, has really colonized our awareness of giving. And when you look at the way that foundations and many other giving institutions are set up, that they're largely colored by our way of thinking with purchase money and loan money. And she suggests that one of the really important tasks, socially speaking, is to be able to become more literate in the quality of the gift, which often will have effects so far in the future that it becomes futile to try to rationalize it in financial or economic terms. And more the question of where do I want to give and for what reason, because something good is being done that's ultimately you have faith is going to lead in a good direction. Though you can't say specifically how. There's no 5-year plan. There's no 10-year plan that can inspire confidence that this is going to indeed deliver. There's no 20-year plan. And she suggests that developing that kind of culture of trust, of being able to discern the right places to give things away, resources and philanthropy, is a real important task. And in this conversation that she called Liberating Gift Money, she suggests a number of things for people to try to practice this, and she works with a lot of people who are stewarding huge amounts of resources. And she suggests in some cases that even if you might give in order to get a tax write-off, which is law in a lot of countries, in the United States for many gifts, she suggests, why don't you give and not take the tax write-off? Why don't you pay your taxes and give? And a number of other practical exercises and suggestions that she introduced helped everyone, I think, in the conversation to really sense the quality I think she was trying to underline of what it really means to give things away. Now, one of the other things that I couldn't help but think about was the conversation that we had in another working group about owning land and inequality. And I talk about this in some detail in the last episode. But Susan Witt was discussing with us that when we buy land, when anyone buys land, they're actually participating in a process which easily can increase inequality and drive inequality. And where the money that we put into land gives us sometimes profits which are not really justified because we're not creating goods in the market, nor are we, through our ingenuity, creating new inventions. So there's a kind of driver of inequality through the institution of land ownership. And one of the things I was thinking about when I was reading the lectures that both Susan and Kelley suggested we read in preparation for these conversations was how these two things are connected: land ownership and liberating gift money. And this is what I found really interesting to think about, is Rudolf Steiner has his take on economics is really a mobile and dynamic take. And one of the things that he suggests that is really important to understand economics is that alongside thinking about production and adding value and creating wealth, we have to be able to see how wealth is destroyed. And not only through exchanges in the market where one person buys something in exchange for money and they consume it, but also on a much larger scale through gifting. And he suggests that when you start to think about the dynamic economy where we transform nature into commodities, and we organize ourselves to do that in an efficient way, and we are trading them in the marketplace, and there's production and consumption going on, that there's a need for a very, very strong, pure consumption process in order to feel the living quality, the kind of organism of the economy. And he suggests that we cannot raise this into our consciousness unless we're able to see how the role of gift money in the economy is that area of the destruction of value. And it is an important area of the destruction of value. And while it destroys huge amounts of value through consumption, let's say taking care of all of the children who are not producers in the world, it's connected to the seeds of an economy in the future that we do not calculate in our audits, that we do not calculate in our annual profit and loss or balance statements. And he suggests that you have to think outside of these accounting terms in order to really understand the economy. Now, I was thinking about this because in the series of lectures, Rudolf Steiner pretty much moves from talking about land to talking about the importance of gift money. And in essence, when we look at putting money in land, he suggests it's much better to put it in loan money, but where people are, creating new things and commodities to meet other people's needs or services, ideally. But even more important or more powerful is giving resources, giving money away. And in a long-term, sustainable and interconnected picture of economics, this would have to be understood. And he says, quote, people would have to have enough money that they could give some away, and they would have to have the good sense and goodwill to give it away in this lecture. So there he kind of points towards a kind of understanding of the importance of giving and supporting one another for long-term economic health. So this is one of the things that came to mind after having had the conversation with Susan and then speaking with Kelley, or being part of this working group conversation. That instead of investing in land, actually a lot of the money that is going into land and driving inequality, if it was moving into gifting in the right way, what a powerful shift that would be, and what a huge impact it would have when we think about the amount of money that's going into real investments. Yeah, so that actually just gives a lot of hope as a picture, or maybe as a possible move in a social movement or an economic movement, which brings me again to the end, the last question. In these working groups, we have been posing 3 questions. 1, we've been trying to ask a question central to associative economics and invite an expert that knows about that through, of course, understanding, but also their practice and their profession. So we had a session on gift money with Kelley. The second question we want to ask is, what would this look like on a global scale if there was a world economic conference that was dedicated to associative and cooperative economics? And the third question is, what would need to happen to move towards that world conference? And I think that it's clear, one of the things that, if we think about having a World Economic Conference, and then there's a section of people that are only talking about gift money, that are only gathering together and having a day to work on the importance and the right places for gift money, that in order to get there, we would need to have a widespread understanding of the power, the unbelievable power of gift money in the long run on the economy. And to be able to think way beyond the short-term profits and economic bookkeeping and auditing that we are so accustomed to. And we need to stop shaping maybe the way we think about gifts and administer gifts as if they were loans, which is one of Kelley's suggestions. That we would need to have a gift culture or a philanthropic culture where it was really understood it's impossible to calculate the ultimate impact and outcome, or to have a strategy that could accommodate a gift in the sense that we're talking about. And then it would come closer to being gift money the way that Kelley characterized it. So that would be a very huge cultural movement to be able to understand the importance of giving in this sense, and not simply as a moral act, but understanding that it's deeply connected with the economic bounty and sustainability of the world that will be lived in 20 or 30 years. So, of course, there would be so much more to talk about when we think about liberating gift money. But here I've talked about some of the ideas that came up in the working group, and we're in mid-process. Kelley will be at the event in September, as well as many other people who have experience in these areas, and we will be taking it a step further. But that's a report from the working group that has taken up the question of liberating gift money in preparation for our event in September. Questions of Courage is a collaboration between the youth section and the Goetheanum communications team. The production cost to put this together is quite small, and we're very happy that these videos and episodes go out for people who are interested in learning about these things that are discussed. I do want to encourage you to consider to make a contribution to the Youth Access and Project Fund, which simply will lower economic barriers for young people to be part of these events, youth work around the world, and conversations like this. Thank you.